Hey there, bookworms. Welcome to Pouring Over Books, a podcast where we dive into the books we love and maybe a few we didn't. I'm your host, LaShawn, and every week I'll be deep diving into what I'm reading, recommendations, and talking about all the things that we love about books. So grab your favorite coffee or tea, find a cozy spot, and let's get ready to pour over some great books together. Welcome, friends. I am LaShawn, and this is the Pouring Over Book podcast, and welcome back. Today's topic is going to be one of my favorite topics, a topic I could talk about all day. It is romantasy, friends. I have always been a lover of fantasy. Remember the books that got me interested in reading were the Chronicle of Narnia series, and I've always been a Star Wars fan, and I loved like Game of Thrones. I read the books way before the series came out. I love fantasy. I love good fantasy. But of course, I also love a good romance book. So imagine my surprise when I discovered that someone had the genius idea to combine the two. But back then, it wasn't called romantasy. It was mainly romance books with a bit of magic in them. I'm talking Jane Ann Krantz in her Arcane Society series. That was circa 2008. Nora Roberts has always dabbled in a little bit of magic in a lot of her series. But what comes to mind for me is her Circle trilogy. That was around 2006. And her Cousins O'Dwyer series. Those two specifically, I remember the Circles trilogy is actually one of my favorite trilogies of her all time. It combines witches, vampires, magic. It is another world, time travel. It is truly a good time, and I recommend you do that. Just check the show notes. Check that one out. But then around 2010 to 2020, that's when there was a breakthrough, or rather a shift in what we now call romantasy. We had the Discovery of Witches series starting in 2011. Jennifer Armentrout started writing books, and indie publishers started publishing straight to Kindle Unlimited. And then Sarah J. Maas's A Court of Thorns and Roses series shifted the entire focus of the genre from YA fantasy to what we now call romantasy. So a quick definition of romantasy is the intersection between romance and fantasy genres. But the long definition is that romantasy requires both a central love story and a significant fantasy elements where neither can be removed without collapsing the story. So that means that the love story is integral to the plot, and the relationship and its development and even character growth is sometimes tied to the romance in the book. There is usually a magic system, political systems influenced by magic, prophecies, supernatural creatures like witches, vampires, fae, magical bonds between the couples, soulmate bonds, etc., etc. Romance, I guess, took over book talk right around the time of the pandemic and has not let up since. But now publishers are throwing their weight and money into new releases and special editions and sprayed edges, and romantasy is mainstream. We now have subgenres in romantasy like dark fantasy, monster romance, which I have not gotten into, Asian-inspired settings, and LGBTQ plus representation. And they have increased diversity in settings and representation. And now having a good level of spice has become standard. And when I say good level, I mean it's almost leaning too far where there's more spice than plot, but I digress. We will talk about that another day. So whether you love it or hate it, romantasy is here to stay, which brings me to today's episodes and recommendations. So if you are a little curious, I'm going to recommend a few books to get you started in the world of romantasy. I know it's overwhelming, because there are so many these days. I mean, literally, you can look on the bookshelves and be like, where do I even start? And not every book is for everyone, like I always say, and that is okay. But if you are curious about romantasy, I'm going to give you a few recommendations that are beginner friendly, I'd say, or rather books that I always recommend friends start with. Also note that every book that is on my list as a part of a series. There are rarely good one-offs, and that pisses me off because I like a good one-off, but they're never one-offs. So I picked these because they sort of lead you into the story and don't beat you over the head with them. Because a lot of the one-offs that I could tell you about, they're not good for beginners into Romantasy. But we can talk about those another day. So let's get into my choices. Okay, number one, the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. Yes, not ACOTAR. Do not start with ACOTAR. Start here. This is by far her best series. It is the story of an assassin who goes on to save the world, and that's all I'm going to say without giving it away. It's full of magic and fae and intrigue and, of course, romance. It starts off really YA fantasy and expands full on into romantasy by book 5. The fact that it starts off as YA is a plus because YA fantasy, in my opinion, has better world building and better character development and plot. When she wrote the first book, it was going to be marketed as YA, and you can tell the first 2 books were really marketed as YA. But by the time she got to book 3, you could see the shift. But the real shift didn't happen till around book 4. Yeah, book 4, book 5. Book 5, that's when it stepped fully into adult romantasy. This series is start to finish is excellent from start to finish, and it is 7 books. I hate to tell people that. It is 7 books. 8 if you count the novella, but you do not have to read the novella to enjoy the series, but it does give lots of background, and I recommend reading the books in the order that they were published. I don't recommend any of those tandem reads you see no, just read them one by one in the order they were published. On plot storyline, it gets a 5 out of 5. On spice levels, I'll say it gets to a 3 out of 5 once you get the books, 5 out of 7. Books 1 through 4, I give the spice level a 2, if that. There's more cursing than spice. So anyway, all right. The second series that I'm going to recommend is the Legend-Born Cycle series by Tracy Deonn. The Legend-Born series by Tracy Deonn follows Bree Matthews, a Black teenage girl who discovers a secret society of magical beings descended from King Arthur's Knights of the Round Table at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. I included this one because this is a good example of romantasy without a lot of sex. Actually, there's no sex in these books if I'm thinking about it. So if, a whole bunch of spice isn't your thing, this is where you start. It is an excellent story and has all the magical elements you need. Plus, it is one of the few books that I have read that uses King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table as premise. It is very creative and very well done. I usually recommend this simply because, like I said, it's a good story and it has a good plot. Note, the 3rd book is out this year in March. I have mine pre-ordered and I am ready. Okay, so plot, I give it a 5 out of 5. Spice, I give it a 1 because there's sexual tension and kissing, but nothing more because she's in college. So I think it might lean towards new adult, but there's no sex yet. I don't know what she has in mind for the next few books, but as of now, no. All right. Our 3rd series that I'm going to recommend is The Serpent and the Wings of Night duology by Carissa Broadbent. The Crowns of Naxios duology by Carissa Broadbent follows Aurea, a human raised by a vampire king. To prove her worth and to escape the prejudices that most humans in a vampire society have or deal with, she enters into the Kajari, a deadly tournament where only the strongest survive. I recommend this because it is a slow burn, enemies to lovers with vampires book. And it's a duology, so it's not a lot of time commitment. There is an actual plot. There is war. There is lots of fighting. It's bloody. It's gory. But there's also a slow burn romance that is top tier. Top tier. Spice levels, I'd say 3. There's not a whole lot of spicy scenes. There in the first book, there's one. But the spicy scenes are what we have are really, really good. Let's just put it like that. So that's why it gets the 3 out of 5, because what we do get is excellent. Plot, storyline, I give it 4.5 out of 5 for me. All right. The fourth book / series that I'm going to recommend is the Blood and Ash series by Jennifer Armentrout. I'm going to go ahead and say I recommend this with mixed thoughts. The Blood and Ash series by Jennifer L. Armentrout follows Poppy, a young woman destined to ascend to become a goddess. However, her life takes an unexpected turn when she encounters Castile, a fallen prince from a neighboring kingdom. I'm going to say I just gave away some of the plot, but not really. It'll be okay. The series is not complete. The final book finally comes out this year. There are 6 total books in this series, and if I'm honest, skip the last one, because you really only need chapter 1 and the last chapter of that book to know what's going on. You are welcome. This series has frustrated me for many, many years. Many, many years. I'm glad that it's finally coming to its conclusion so that I can have closure. It is a good example of world building, and the story is good and convoluted, and the love story itself is stellar. Note, this book, I'm going to say, has the highest level of spice of all the books I'm recommending today. Plot, I give it a 4 out of 5. Once you get over a few things. The first spice, I'm going to say the first book is like a 2 out of 5, honestly. 2 out of 5. But after that, it's on fire. Full 5 out of 5. If I can give it 10 out of 5, yes, this book can be off the chain. I mean, but it fits. It's not gratuitous, but it's a lot. It's a lot. So if, a whole lot is not your cup of tea, this one ain't for you. But if you're curious, or if a whole lot is your cup of tea, yeah, go for it. All right. And the last book or series that I want to recommend is the Fourth Wing series. You really didn't think you were going to end without this series, did you? The Fourth Wing series by Rebecca Yarros follows Violet Sorengale, a young woman who unexpectedly joins the elite Dragger Rider Quadrant as Beskaya War College. Despite her physical frailties and facing prejudice, she endures grueling training, deep challenges, deadly challenges, and the constant threat of death to bond with a dragon. This book and series is a prime example of the power of book talk and bookstagram. I learned about this on someone's bookstagram page when it first came out, and I saw it on another. I kept seeing it and I was intrigued by it, but no one was really talking about it. So I borrowed it from the library because I was like, okay. By the time I started reading that book, which was maybe a week later, it was completely sold out everywhere. And the library had like 500 holes on 2 books because no one expected it to blow up like it did. No one. It's a phenomenon. And it's not that it's the best written book or even the best told story, even the best spice. Really, it's not. But it is good, and it's cute, and it's catchy, and you just get, invested in what's going on. And it actually is the perfect book to enter into the Romantasy world because it's not too deep. Even though I say once you move into the second book, it does get a little bit heavier. And I think that's why a lot of people didn't necessarily like the second book as much as they liked the first one, because the second book has all the meat. And that's usually what happens in series anyway. When you get to the middle books, that's when it starts to lag to some people because it's not as fun and exciting as the first book. You really get into the meat of the story by the time you get to the second book. So anyway, I always describe this series as Hunger Games with dragons. It has everything you want: dragons, decent world building, enemies to lover, spicy times, cliffhangers, drama, battles, death. Yeah, it's a ride. The third book is out today. And by the time you listen to this podcast, I will have it in my hands after I make a quick trip to Target as soon as they open, which is in 30 minutes. So yes, I highly recommend. Plot, storyline, I give it a 4 out of 5. The second book, you have to be patient, especially with Violet. Bless her heart. Zayden too, but that's a whole nother story. Book 1, I'll say the spice is a 3.5 out of 5. I mean, there was lightning and shadows involved. So second book, I'll still give it a 3.5 out of 5. Okay. So, okay, friends, that is my list of recommendations. I hope I intrigued you enough to try at least one of the books that I have mentioned above. And that is it. Let me see, let's talk about what I am currently reading. I am currently finishing up Iron Flame, and I will be diving into Onyx Storm as soon as I am done with that. That will be what I am reading for the rest of the week. And so I will probably have an update for you the next time we speak, because next week's episode is going to be what I read in January, I do believe. So I will be off of Bookstagram and Book Threads until I'm done, because people can't keep their mouth shut. Like, literally, people can't keep their mouth shut. People be posting spoilers everywhere, just randomly. You click on a video and you spoil it. So I'm like, no, no, no. Currently loving bookstores. I just want to talk about this real quick. This Saturday, let me just start saying, I love to support a good independent bookstore. We have a ton of them here in Atlanta, and I visit them often because that's what I'm near. But I was in another part of town this past weekend, and I got to visit a Barnes& and Noble. I have not been inside of a Barnes& and Noble since before COVID times, because they closed the one on my side of town in my neighborhood and replaced it with a Marshall's, which I am still deeply upset about. But this past weekend, I got to go visit Barnes& and Noble. And let me just say, I grew up with Barnes& and Noble, or Borders, friends. So I grew up, and it was an experience when you went to the bookstore. So when I walked into the Barnes& and Noble this weekend, it was like coming home to stroll and browse and, drink a little coffee, have a cookie. I miss actually having an experience in a bookstore. And despite my love for the independent bookstores, I can admit that the experience is what will always, always draw me back to big box bookstores like Barnes& and Noble, even like Books A Million, things like that, because it's a whole experience. Like, you can buy the books, you can sit down somewhere and browse the books, you can have a little coffee, you can have a cookie, you can have a snack, all in the same place. It's like a gathering center, and I miss that. So that is why I will always find me a good big bookstore. Now, if I can find an independent bookstore that offers me the same, I'll be there. There are several new bookstores here in Atlanta that have opened, independent bookstores that have opened lately, and I have a plan this year to find my one, because I can't always get all the way up there to that Barnes& and Noble. But anyway, okay, that's all I got. I've got to make my way to Target so I can be there when they are open. I want the special edition, and they won't let me order it online for pickup, and I'm kind of pissed. I'm hot. But anyway, I'm going to make my way over that. But that is all. Please make sure you like, share, comment, give me a good review on whatever Apple Podcasts or Spotify podcast, because that helps me find other bookish friends just like us. And it helps me continue to do this podcast. And that is all, friends. I will see you all soon. Bye-bye.